And we're live.
Yeah.
Welcome.
How many shows have we done this week?
Hey, don't ruin the surprise.
Don't ruin. Yeah.
Welcome. It is live at Epiphan, your favorite technology show that broadcasts at 3 o'clock from the Epiphan office.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
Guaranteed.
So it is 3 o'clock as usual.
Yes.
And we're here.
We are
We're
here.
a couple of people. My name's Cameron.
And of course, I'm George, and today we have a great topic, and so make sure you say hi in chat, throw in your comments as we go along, and if you have any experience with today's subject, please throw it in there. What are we talking about today?
So, if you didn't notice it on the screen already, we are going to be talking about how to extend HDMI via Ethernet.
Yeah.
So this is something that does apply to a lot of folks that are doing live video production.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to run it at home.
Exactly.
You know, maybe you're using it in the office or for some other kind of practical application.
Yeah.
So it's something that we haven't really tried a whole lot. I don't have any real experience with this particular setup, so it was a really cool experimentation this week going into it.
So we've got a whole bunch of points we're going to go through with you guys. So any questions you have or any comments or opinions you have, make sure you throw them into chat. But before we dive into that, this is the last show before Christmas. Are you ready? Are you ready for Christmas?
I just want that title to go away. There we go. Stream Deck, you're letting me down, man.
That's what happens when you use that. Anyway.
Oh yeah. So
ready?
that's the magic word.
Yeah, Christmas.
I am ready for Christmas.
Are you?
Whoa!
Yeah. Yeah.
Look at the kinetics and stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty. Ooh.
That's so cool.
That
And then
was
how do we
leaning on
like?
your back.
You go.
You could blow it up.
There we
blow
go.
it up.
Sweet.
Anyway, we're playing around. Of course, I hope everyone is actually ready for Christmas. It obviously is a very exciting time of year. Kind of looking forward to having a little bit of a break as well with everyone. So let us know if you're ready for Christmas. I'm more excited, first of all, as some people might be able to tell by my wardrobe today. I'm more excited about this evening more than anything. Can you guess why?
Oh yeah, the Star Wars thing.
Oh yeah, the thing.
Anyway, they're still making those.
If anyone else has tickets for opening night of Star Wars tonight, throw it into chat. And it means nothing, but throw it in there. Anyway, let's jump into our topic. And
let's say hi to Rudy first. Rudy is watching from Belgium, so thanks for tuning in, Rudy.
Tim is watching from Orlando, Florida. We could have guessed that one, Tim.
Yeah, you surprised us one day, Tim.
Yeah,
I'm watching from outside your window.
Yeah, watching from, and of course I can say hi to myself on Facebook. Anyway,
that's a great photo. I hope. Did you get lots of nice gifts for Erin this year?
Well,
she's watching stuff right now from the break room.
We just bought a car. That seems like a pretty good gift to me. So
you're
anyway.
gonna just like, it'll be a card with a photo of the car that you already got in it.
No, it's pretty good. No, it's more about family. It's more about family. So anyway, today's subject, before we get too distracted with Christmas.
Anywho, I know, I'm just very excited about Christmas.
I know.
This is the last episode
But you have young
Christmas.
kids, that's why. You need that mountain of presents to fall from the sky. But today's main topic is extending HDMI over Ethernet. And there are multiple ways to do this. We're going to talk about one that we actually have been playing with and experimenting with and share with you our experiment as well. So, the first thing though is who needs this? Who benefits from this?
So as you mentioned just when we kicked off the show, anyone doing live video production, you know that the struggle is real, right? You've got a camera at the front, maybe you've got like at the back, you know, a back camera that's like in a nice wide shot, and the studio, or sorry, your control room is not going to be like right at the front of the stage.
It's not always convenient.
It's
not always convenient. You know, many of our customers use some of, like a Pearl Mini in a lecture hall, and the camera's at the back, and sometimes all the encoding and other gear is at the front, and not everyone has an SDI camera. SDI is great for running long distances, but what if you only have HDMI? What do you need out of that? And so
an HDMI
extending
can get a little bit pricey too when you're running it. So.
Exactly. So this can help with that production budget. It can help maybe just running a signal from maybe your main encoding switching environment to a breakout room next door as a fairly inexpensive way to run it, if you want.
And you get multiple sources. The unit that we are playing with today is just a 1-to-1, but you can get other ones that'll split the signal, so you can take this one HDMI out, you can put it to 4 different monitors, right? You could be using it for digital signage, right? Have it all buried in the walls, but generally those are the folks that would benefit from this kind of solution.
So one of the questions that came up while we were looking at this and doing some research on which ones we wanted to buy was, why wouldn't we just buy a fiber HDMI cable, which is something that we actually use ourselves quite a lot. Well, the main reason is cost.
So it's the cost for sure.
It is. So HDMI typically, as a standalone copper cable, a traditional cable, maxes out at about 50 feet. And they're very heavy. Maybe you can get 100 feet, but they're like massive gauge. They're not great.
Yeah, we have those big ones, and they're hard to wrap. You gotta wrap them, and it's like wrapping like a 100-watt cable or something.
Extremely heavy. So we have a lot of fiber ones. Fiber's great. It's very thin, very light. But they're very expensive and extremely delicate. You cannot kink them. You cannot twist them.
Totally messed up my hair now.
Yeah, just don't touch it. Makeup. So some of the reasons why you might...
sorry, you said they're fragile. Because it's fiber optic, so it's literally glass. And
if you kink it breaks.
And I did come across one. I was doing a setup, and it wasn't working, and I was trying to figure it out, and I thought it was the camera, maybe it's the pearl on one end, and of course I didn't do the thing I should have checked first, was make sure the cable's working. Along the line there was this nice little break, big gouge in there, and it's done. Like, there's no repairing that.
Exactly. So, you know, if you were running maybe in a more complicated setup, or if you were making a choice to run things where people are stepping on them, or maybe closing doors on them, or maybe through conduit or anything like that, like if you have to pull on it through conduit to fish it,
you're gonna tug it through.
Fiber's not a good choice. They're not durable enough for that in many cases. Cat 5, on the other hand, is built for that.
You can step on it, you can slam it.
Yeah,
and if you do break it, right? If you break this line, if you sever it, you can just put it back together.
If you really want to.
Splice it back together.
But it's also so cheap that who cares? You can buy a 1,000-foot box of Cat 5 for next to nothing.
And that's literally what we did. So for this week, went on Amazon, looked for the least expensive one. It was Cat 5e, and I think I got the 1,000-foot roll for like $70.
Yeah.
Like, that's insane. Not to mention the mono price.
Well, exactly.
Adapter is pretty cheap.
So when we were looking at this, I looked up some of the fiber cables, and even the ones we have. If you want to run, let's say 100 feet with a fiber cable, which is about the maximum you really find, you're talking costs in the $150 all the way up to $250 for that one cable. That's crazy. We found this solution, which is like less than a third of that price, basically. In that range. So
well, that's where the math really comes in, because you're looking at a third of the cost, and if you're scaling this, you can even bring it down more. So you're buying more cable, it's less expensive.
Exactly.
And a Cat 5 cable is a Cat 5 cable, generally, right? Different vendors, but it's pretty much the same. So across the board, it's the same quality. Versus if you get an HDMI cable, you might only get a few uses out of it.
Exactly, it's wildly different.
It may break down on you after some uses. So, but Cat 5 is pretty reliable. And one thing that you mentioned that was actually pretty smart and I hadn't considered is that if you have a Cat 5 cable, you can actually use it for something else.
Yeah, just use it as a network cable like it's intended, so it becomes more multi-use instead of an HDMI cable, which obviously has a dedicated piece.
And of course, like Cat 5, you can use it for networking, you can use it for audio, you can use it as a phone line, right? You can bring all kinds of signals over Cat 5.
The other thing, of course, is, when we're looking at this type of technology, what's the difference between, HDMI via Ethernet versus video over IP? Because they're not really the same. Well, they're similar.
That's where, when I was starting to do the research for this show, I was kind of thinking, like, is this an NDI thing? Like, is this going to be an encoder and a decoder on either side? But no, it doesn't cross into that at all. So it's totally different in that there's no encoding. It's not actually sending it the same way, and you're not putting on any system load either.
Exactly. So the ones we've been playing with are very passive. They don't even use external power supplies. They just draw power from HDMI, which is extremely minimal. They aren't doing any encoding. Because of that, you actually have to use 2 parallel lines of Ethernet on the particular model we got.
Yeah, for this one, because it is like 0 voltage.
Yeah, there are obviously single ones that usually have some amplifier or booster to them. There are definitely units out there, HD-based T things like that, that do some level of encoding. There's also obviously NDI, which is technically encoded and decoded.
Well, and we know, as we know from NDI, NDI does add a level of complexity, right? So you have to be aware of what your network can handle. You have to be taking a look at your overhead, all the devices. There's a lot of math, right? We broke that down, and depending on the cameras and the switcher and everything, you could actually be in a spot where you're overloading with NDI.
Exactly.
Without really knowing it.
Right, exactly. So the ones we're using, and maybe just grab that box, we'll bring it in here.
Now just be careful, it's a little reflective in here.
Yeah, it is. Well, ooh, ghost box. Ooh. The one we got, you can't see because the label is green, but this is the Monoprice Pigtail HDMI extender. This one is rated for 30 meters or 98 feet for those stuck in the Stone Age.
For Tim down in Florida.
And these are, like I say, totally passive. The nice part about these is there's a sender and a receiver unit, so 2 come in the package. This was how much on Monoprice?
$12.
$12.
So why buy one when you could buy 2?
Well, it's Monoprice. You might want to buy 2 just to be sure. But $12 for this, plus some super cheap Ethernet cables to get you 100 feet, is the other advantage of these. Because these ones are not encoder style ones. These are essentially peer-to-peer, sender to receiver. There is no latency, zero.
Yeah, zero.
Absolutely zero. There's no loss of image quality because there's no encoding or compression happening. It's just perfect, flawless, zero latency. So that's great. That's a big advantage.
It's actually simple to set up, and we can demonstrate that by this user manual that is not only microscopic, but has
one
like
page.
One page.
Yeah.
And I think this is even over-explaining.
That's just the don't choke on the packaging warning.
Basically, warning. Not let your kids play with this.
Yeah. So obviously, there's lots of other choices out there, but I think when you look at something like this, the cost for that 100 foot is very attractive. So the limitations, of course, this one for $12 is that 98 foot. Or at least that's what they claim.
Well, and that's the max that the manufacturer says.
Yes.
And we did do some experimentation with that.
We did. Yeah, we did do some experimentation with that. And actually, if we can actually switch right now to show you, because we were talking about how good it is. Let's, like I swear to God, we just switched. I think that was
the switch. Was that the switch? Yeah, that was the switch.
We just switched to a feed going into Pearl from our camera directly to the extender running over 98 feet of Ethernet, and you can't tell. It's exactly the same. You cannot tell at all. And we're not lying.
I really should have had the cable on the desk.
Yeah.
Because literally, like,
there's a lot of cable down there.
Desk, we've got like 600 feet of Cat 5 cable.
It's not actually 600 feet.
Well, yeah, sorry.
There's a lot.
Yeah,
there's a
like
lot.
400. No, it'd be 300. Plus another 200, so like almost 500 feet.
So we knew it worked at 100 because we made 100-foot cables, we put that together, it was working. So then we said, well, for fun, let's double it. Let's do, Monoprice doesn't know what they're talking about. Of course we can do longer.
We applied Moore's Law.
It doesn't apply to this, but that's
okay.
Doubling. No,
doubling.
That definitely doesn't apply here. But we doubled it, and we made 200-foot cables.
Yeah, two 200-foot cables.
Yes, because these do run in parallel, 2 parallel lines. That didn't work.
No. And so my hypothesis in this experiment was that it would work, but it would be staticky, and
that's not how digital data works.
No, yeah, okay. I guess it's on or off, right?
Basically,
like ones or zeros. But I was hoping for some digital artifacting and not like static, like we saw with the analog signal from our drone episode. But
see, that's
that's
analog. Yeah. See, with digital, and the downside is that if you get to into a position, and traditional copper long HDMI cables suffer this all the time, if you don't have a strong signal, it's just not there. By the time you get to the end of the cable, there's just nothing there. So Tim was mentioning in chat that he uses active HDMI for 100 foot. And that is another similar approach. Those are grabbing extra power and bringing it in to make sure that it's boosted to get to the end. Those definitely are good. Similar to fiber, they're usually directional, which is not always the greatest. The nice part about these Ethernet ones for $12 is that although they are directional in the sense that there's a sender and a receiver, you don't have to move the whole 100-foot cable. You just disconnect the sender and receiver and switch them, and the cable you've already laid stays the same. Whereas, and trust me, we've done it, all of a sudden swinging around 100 foot that you've already run across a huge space because it's directional is a pain.
Well, so, we used to have the camera back there, and we had the shot from behind the studio looking out. That was our BTS shot. And then sometimes I would take the whole cable out, switch it so I could put a monitor feed back there, and it was such a hassle having to like move the cable back and forth.
Exactly. So not being really directional on the wire itself has some big advantages, so I do like that. So the 200 feet didn't work, but 100 feet is working great. Yep. So we decided, let's chop a little off and see what happens.
Yeah, so literally I went back to our, because we have a support, what is Pavel's, like, is there support? He does everything. He's like our handyman. He's the man. He's making AVIOs in the back.
The guy's half retired, and he's works harder than anybody I know.
He puts in more and more time being half retired here than Actually, I'll bite my tongue there. But so I went back to Pavel. I said, hey, can you cut this down a little bit more? And he said, yeah, of course, but only if you give me the stuff you cut off. I was like, okay, sure.
Yeah. So he cut 50 feet off. And we ended up with about 150 feet.
150 feet-ish.
150 feet-ish.
My measuring technique may not have been the most sound part of the experiment.
150 feet-ish, and let's go to the comparison. So in this scenario, we have our direct local HDMI, we have our 100-foot, and we have our 150-foot. Yep. We are not faking this. This is 100% true. And as you guys can see, there's no signal loss. There's no latency difference.
There's no latency in it.
It's exactly the same. And basically what we did to do this, so you know we're not kind of, pull a fast one on you, the camera output from the C100 is going into an HDMI splitter. The HDMI splitter is feeding Pearl 2 directly on one output. Yep. It's feeding the units on one for the 98-foot and another output going to the 150-foot. So we actually have two different extender setups. That's why another reason we bought two.
Well, and I even thought, like, just this amount of wiring all cabled up, is it gonna like pick up interference? Like, we didn't buy expensive shielded cable either.
No,
and it's fine. It's all coiled up. It's all together.
The cheapest Cat 5e you can buy in bulk, which means we also hand terminated the ends, which, if anyone knows or has done a lot of that, even that can be a weak point and a place of failure if you don't have people knowing what they're doing crimping properly. And even then it can go wrong.
Well, and Pavel was actually, he was worried when I brought the cable back. Said, oh, it didn't work. Said, oh, did I crimp it wrong? I was like, no, it's us, it's not you.
You can easily buy pre-made factory 100-foot Ethernet cables, and they're relatively inexpensive. I think even here in Canada, where things are more expensive, you can get a 100-foot Ethernet cable for about $15.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's
just don't go to Home Depot to buy your Ethernet cable.
Yeah, no.
If you want to spend the most money on something that is relatively inexpensive,
don't go to Best Buy or Home Depot and get those monster cables that make no difference.
And of course, we have kind of revealed a little bit of our secret here. So we were shooting in front of a green screen, doing a 3-layer green screen composite. Wasn't quite in my
so looking at the chat here, Kim was also saying, how about Hollyland System or Teradek? Do you have any experience with these? We've played with Teradek wireless extenders.
Yeah. The bolts. We've used the bolt extender before.
And a lot of environmental variables. If you have any cement walls, no go. Not great. The wireless, like anything wireless, and one of the reasons why we always talk about when you're live streaming to make sure you're wired, if you imagine an uncompressed wireless signal being sent, any signal degradation is going to hurt real bad. And cement walls are really not good for wireless penetration.
No, they don't play well with that at all.
If you're outside, line of sight, no problem. Great. But maybe, lined up next to a few microwaves and some cement walls, you're probably in trouble.
Now, I did have a client once that did request that we ran a whole bunch of cabling so that we could have a backroom monitoring, stuff that was happening out in the front of this event. And I can't remember the name of the model that I rented, but I did go to an AV house who rented this huge extender, and it was a lot of amplification, and it was just a real pain to get it all set up, because then you'd have power at both ends.
Exactly.
You'd have somewhere to actually put this like monster amplifier that really was set up for like 1,000-foot transmission. Like it was, you could go,
be a bit crazy.
to the moon with this thing. But yeah, not with the Hollyland one or the Teradek. But the Teradek in general is pretty solid.
They are pretty good, but they're also very expensive. They're definitely not $12. So I think the main thing
put a few
here,
zeros on the end of that one.
Yeah, I think the main thing here is that we bought basically the cheapest thing we could find, thinking that it wasn't really going to be much good. I actually am pretty impressed. I think I don't know if we could have gone 175 feet instead of 150. We didn't quite make that many cables, but if you're between 0 and 150 feet, I'm pretty confident that this is a good solution. So I could see this even in a venue or your own home where you need to run HDMI multiple places and you want to run wires in the walls. Ethernet's a great choice for that.
Exactly.
And again, it can be multifunction when you're not using it for video and you pop these adapters off. It doesn't have to be hard permanent wiring at the very ends.
And if you're watching this episode because you're looking at buying this particular model or you're trying to find a solution for it,
use code. No.
Yeah, exactly. Check out our comments below for that purchase code. No, I was going to say this one is great, and if you're doing a reno on your home, if you want to use it for personal transmission,
if you're ever gutting your house and rewiring things, put Ethernet everywhere you can.
Yeah.
It's just going to be helpful no matter what you do.
Just throw 5 cables into every room.
Just do it.
You don't know what you might need.
Just have a whole 6-gang box beside every outlet. You're fine. So is it a good solution? Yeah, I think
absolutely.
it is. I think it is. This is a great one. This is something that if I had to run cables to opposite ends of a large trade show booth again, I would rather do this than bring those fiber cables.
Totally.
Just because of the durability of this versus fiber, and the fact that we always send extra Ethernet cables anyways because you always need them. It kind of gives you that more multifunction in a single thing.
Exactly.
The adapters themselves are very small. I mean, the box, 2 of them fit in there. They're only about this big.
Well, not to be too wasteful, but at the end of the trade show, you want to get those HDMI cables back because they're expensive. But the Ethernet one, it's like, okay, well, maybe that just goes in the recycling bin.
Exactly. It's also more likely that you could ask a contractor to run this.
Totally.
Whereas telling them to go buy a $300 fiber cable, probably not realistic.
Not so much.
And they will break it, I know from experience. Whereas this, no problem. So, I would say yes, it's absolutely a great solution if you need to get 100, 150 feet or less. $12, man. $12.
You can't go wrong. You definitely can't go wrong with that price.
Just buy 2.
Yeah, buy 2. Yes. And I should say, actually, before we wrap it up, my initial testing didn't go so well. So I was using my MacBook, trying to send the signal to a grabber, and because I was playing with the resolutions and a few other things, it wasn't quite working. And we should point out too that this device only supports up to 1080.
Yeah, it's full HD only. It is not 4K or anything like that.
So you're not going to be able to send a 4K signal, which I think is why it broke on the MacBook, because the MacBook wants to send this.
It was trying to do the Retina stuff and all that nonsense, and I just kind of panicked. I also think when you described it to me, there might have been some HDCP stuff going on because we were running into a capture device instead. So once we switched to a real camera, no problem. Everything was great. So yeah.
Cool. So what do we have going on else? What else going on else? I have too much going on. I can't talk properly.
That's the problem. This week has been crazy.
It's been
leading up to
2
next
weeks for
week.
the price of one.
Of course, next Thursday is a day that we call Boxing Day here in Canada and generally in the UK.
Is that not like everywhere in the world?
No, Americans don't believe in Boxing Day. They don't believe in praying to the god of boxes. We do.
It's
more
based
boxes.
It's based off of the tradition of actually going out and we box in the street.
No, we don't.
Oh,
you're supposed to.
You box for the unwanted gifts.
Anyway, I think we need. Producer, I think we need more boxes.
I'm trying to drop this box hit. Box.
But of course, it is technically.
Hey, there's the boxes.
Hey, boxes. It is technically It is technically a holiday here in Canada,
That's right.
But we are going to be bringing you guys a very special episode next week. I don't know if you want to. Do you want to give it away?
Oh yeah, well, you'll be able to see it as of tomorrow. I think we'll probably put the event up, but we're going to be looking back at some older or some comments that we've received. So having had so many watch hours on YouTube, we have garnered a few comments, some positive, some not so positive. So we're going to be taking a look. We've got a few staff members in the office that have agreed to actually read these messages. So they're going to read them. We're going to react. It's going to be a fun episode.
So join us next week for that. Mean tweets, if you will, but you'll get to see a little bit behind the scenes of some of the other Epiphan staff you normally do not see on our show. And of course, we're another reason why everything is so crazy. We are really not far away from February 11th, which is the first day of ISE in Amsterdam, which is a big trade show. Many of you probably are very aware of that. We've run promos for it before.
Oh, the side's blank. What's the booth number for that?
The stand number is Hall 11, B110.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it's not a booth. We're beyond the booth.
So for those of you familiar with the RAI, 11's kind of just up at the main entrance there. It's pretty easy to get to. We'll be pretty close to the front of it, actually. So if anyone's planning on being in Amsterdam from February 11th to the 14th, come by and say hi.
Yeah, say hello.
I will be there. I don't think Cameron's going.
No,
we have
a schedule conflict, and then we're going to be in another part of Europe earlier next year.
Yeah, there's
another part. It's going to be a lot of travel.
There's a lot going on.
Set that one up. But yeah, swing by the booth. There might be some nice.
Love to see you and chat with you, and maybe we'll be running some cool tech there that we can show off, and love to show you. So as always, make sure to like, subscribe, follow, do all the socially things, all the buttons and the clicky things.
The Twitch. If you're watching on Twitch and you're commenting,
no one's on Twitch.
Oh no! Yeah, someone did.
I don't know who you are, but okay, hopefully you're still watching.
Well, someone is.
Someone is.
Probably me.
It's probably you.
Yeah.
Anyway, so thank you for joining us. I hope you found this interesting. If you do have any questions about these particular monoprice adapters we used, feel free to drop us a line, and we'd love to follow up with you. So, Kim saying in chat, Merry Christmas to all. Same to you, and everyone enjoy their holidays next week. And we will see you on the next one.
And to all, a good stream.
And to all, more boxes.
That was fun. Where'd all the boxes go?
Boxes.
Boxes are gone.
I want boxes.
It's Boxing Day. Boxing Day.
I'm sorry I missed your cues. I'm not good. I'm not listening.
No.
I actually didn't realize that George was doing that for the box cue, so...
That's okay. No one did.
Sorry.
Just winging it.
Well, that's why I wanted to give you the USB mouse so you can trigger it yourself. But then there's the NDI lag.
And I would have forgot.
And the NDI lag makes it like a second behind, so like it's not seamless.
Yeah. Well, and I think with the 2 layers of NDI, or just having the multiple NDI inputs, I was definitely seeing more of a lag on here than I've seen before.
Well, it's a 3840 by 1080